Yeah, we on live.
Shalom. This is the brothers of GMS New Orleans coming at you with another live lesson. But before we get started, as always, we're going to give all praises, glory, and infinite honors to Yahweh, Bahasham,
Yahweh
Yahushai,
B'Hashem,
Bahasham,
Shai, B'Hashem,
Barakadash.
B'Hashem.
Double honors to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone who rule and teach well. And peace and salutations to you, sincere Akim out there, pushing this word in truth and sincerity to the four corners of the globe. May your brothers endure until the end. Shalom. And the premise of this lesson is going to be the fact that July 4th of next month is going to be the 250th year of the United States of America. And brother elders, elders, apostles, and brothers have done plenty videos building up to it, because generally once an empire reaches that 250-year mark, hey, that's the end of it. When we look at the United States of America, we can clearly see it's declining, economically, militarily, and morally. And it's following, the same patterns, the same general patterns that an empire hits before they have a collapse. But we can start off with Obadiah. Obadiah chapter 1. Verses 3 to 4.
Okay, this is Obadiah chapter 1, verse 3. It says, "The pride of thine heart hath deceived thee, thou that dwellest in the clefts of the rock, whose habitation is high, that saith in his heart, who shall bring me down to the ground?"
God. And as I said, the pride of thine heart hath deceived thee, thou that dwellest in the clefts of the rock. And we know Esau likes to dwell in those mountains, but that can also be symbolic of what? The high, lofty position that the Lord's put him in, because mountains are high, and what? Esau's at the top of the nations right now. One of his blessings was to receive the fatness of the earth and the dew of heaven. And the other blessing he had to receive, these things was what? The sword. And when you look at Esau's history, from the Greeks to the Romans, to the colonial era in America till now, Esau has used his military might to subjugate the nations and get in this position he's in. And we know Esau is a godless, carnal man, so he thinks by his own means that he gained everything. As it said, whose habitation is high, who saith in his heart or his mind, who shall bring me down to the ground? And even could a brother give me that Psalms 49? They think their dwelling places shall last forever. Esau's been winning for the last 500 years or so, to where it's to the point that you can see so-called Western civilization, especially America's, on the decline. But Esau thinks that by some chance he's just going to pull it through, and there's no way he could fall.
I got it.
God.
It's Psalms 49 and 11. It says, "The inward thought is that the houses shall continue forever, and their dwelling places to all generations. They called their lands after their own name."
Khan. Who thinks their dwelling places shall last forever? Going back to that Obadiah, who shall bring me down to the ground? This devil thinks that, he's going to pull out a victory somehow. And I mean, look at how the elites are moving. They're getting exposed on all levels. People are turning against them. But what? They're going to go with that move to bring about that great, reset, that digital society, ultimately with the micro C hip implant. But even with that, that signals, his downfall. But you can read verse 4, Amwad.
Back in Obadiah 1 and 4, it says, "Though thou exalt thyself as the eagle, and though thou set thy nest among the stars, thence will I bring thee down, saith Yahweh."
And straight to the point. Though thou exalt thyself as the eagle, which the eagle has been Esau. Look at America. The eagle has been Esau's sign throughout history. And though thou set thy nest among the stars, Esau has these low orbit space stations and satellites and all these different things. Thence will I bring thee down, saith Yahweh, because the Lord has set up a time for every empire throughout history to rule, and when it was time for them to go down, hey, like clockwork, like prophecy, they went down. And Esau just so happens to be the final, heathen kingdom to rule before the eternal kingdom of heaven.
I got one for you, Court.
Con, you got it.
This Job 21 and 23, and then I'm gonna jump back to 21 for you, Raya. But it says, one diet in his full strength, being wholly at ease and quiet. That's the go with the Psalm 49 and 11. Let's be going.
Con. Which one was that one again, Baba Kashad?
Job 21 and 23. And I'm gonna read 21 too. I wanted to just read 23 first. So.
Con.
I'm gonna read it again.
Yeah, you can read it again.
Job 21 and 23. One diet in his full strength, being wholly at ease and quiet.
And that's been these Edomites for the last 500 years or so. They've gained all this wealth through rape, robbery, and murder. And what? When they pass away, they leave their substances to their babes. They feel fully at ease with everything they've gained. And, as these things have compounded through the generations, they feel untouchable. But Yahweh Bahashem, Yahweh Shai has a way of showing you that what? Everything is subject to my will. But again, the pride of thine heart hath deceived thee. Esau thinks he's going to pull out a victory, but, going through prophecy and lining up with current events is clearly not the case.
That the devil is in trouble, as we can see all over the earth, man. In verse 21, for what pleasure had he, and this goes back to one that's in his full strength, at ease and quiet. For what pleasure had he in his house after him when the number of his months is cut off in the midst?
Hey, for what pleasure hath he in his house after him when the number of his months is cut off in the midst? And when we look at these average everyday Edomites out here, they're some of the main ones complaining on social media about this American dream no longer benefit from it. They're going through the cost of living crisis. They're waking up to the fact that their political system is a sham and that these elites take everything and leave them for scraps. They don't see a future for themselves or their children. They're starting to have crash out moments out here. And even all the way up to those elites, what does it say in Job 20? When he's about to sit down and fill his belly, that's when the Most High is going to rain that fire on him, and he's about to bomb up his riches. So the Lord has you Edomites in the perfect bag. And again, I sent the brother some information on the 250-year mark. Next month is July 4th, the 250th year of America. And before then, on June 14th, Donald Trump is hosting a UFC event at the White House. And, when we go to the history of the decline of the Roman Empire, one of a major indicators of that was the gladiator games, bread and circuses, to cover up the fact that people were losing their rights and, the value of their money was decreasing. The powers that be gave them entertainment to, take their minds off of it. But it's going to get to the point to where, even the bread and circus is not going to be able to, be a Band-Aid for the moral, economic, and military decline of this country and just Esau Edom's rulership as a whole. You got some more, Kayat?
That's it.
All right. Yeah, we can get the information on the 50 year.
You want to start with the UFC one, or?
You can start with the 250-year one.
This is a Google right quick. It says the 250-year empire concept stems from a 1976 essay by British General Sir John Glubb, The Fate of Empires. Glubb studied 3,000 years of history and suggested that many empires pass through similar stages and last roughly 12 generations or 250 years before collapsing.
Con, you can keep going.
Con. It says, while the 250-year timeline often aligns with the lifespan of individuals while the 250-year timeline often aligns with the lifespan of individual ruling dynasties, Academic historians widely debate this theory as a universal rule. Lifespans vary wildly based on geopolitical and societal factors.
And you can read that last point, the 250 year shorter examples.
Gone. It says the 250-year or shorter examples, the Achaemenid Persian Empire lasted about 220 years. The British Empire saw its primary global hegemony peak and decline over roughly 250 years. It says, and the original Roman Republic lasted roughly 200 to 250 years before transitioning into an empire.
So while every empire throughout history didn't exactly end at 250 years, that's more or less the mean. That's the measuring stick. Once it hits about that point, that's when leading up to it, you see the stages lead to the decline, and either at that point or shortly after, that's when the decline takes place. And again, when we look at these factors, they're affecting Esau, from Europe and especially in the United States of America. And could a brother give me a
That one for you too.
Khan?
Get that one for you.
Khan. Could a brother give me Psalm 75 verses 6 to 7?
You want me to get that first?
Khan, you can get that one first, and you got your precept.
It's Psalm 75, verse 6. It says, for promotion coming neither from the east nor from the west, nor from the south. But our power is the judge. You put it down one and set it up another.
And straight to the point. For promotion cometh neither from the east, nor from the west, nor from the south. Because, all these empires through history, especially with Esau, they thought by their own might, they set themselves up. And since they had such a good run at dominating things, that there would never be a point where they would decline. But when we look at the Persian Empire, when we look at the Babylonians, when we look at the Romans, every empire had its heyday, then it had its decline and going into the dustbin of history. Verse 7, but the Most High is the judge. He putteth down one and setteth up another. And it's going to be no different than with this new day Rome. Those iron toes mixed with miry clay in Daniel chapter 2. Afterwards, the only thing it speaks about is what? The kingdom of heaven to come. What you got, Akaya?
This Daniel 5 and 24. It says, then was the hand sent from him, and this writing was written. That hand goes into that power or the strength. It says, and this is the writing that was written. Mene, tekel, upharsin. And this is the interpretation of the thing. Mene, God had numbered thy kingdom and finished it.
Khan. And that was dealing with the Neo-Babylonians. The last king of Babylon was having that feast, and then that hand showed up and wrote that sign on the wall, many tekel upharsin. You have been weighed in the balance and found wanting. And then afterwards, what did you have? Darius the Mede, under the orders of Cyrus the Great, the first emperor of the Persian Empire, come and take down the leadership, and then it transitioned to the Persian Empire. And then the Persians had their run, and then the Greeks through Alexander came up. Then you had the Romans, they went down, etc., all the way until today. The Lord setteth up one and put it down another. And it's going to be no different with Esau in the United States of America. It's just that with America, this is going to have the worst collapse and decline of any empire in history, because it's about to go out, with some real fireworks by nuclear destruction. But did a brother have a precept?
I have one. This is the book of Psalms, chapter 73. I'm going to start at 4. The point is in 5. It says, I'm going to start at 5. The point is in 6. It says, they are not in trouble as other men, neither are they plagued like other men. Therefore, pride compasseth them about as a chain, violence covereth them as a garment. So, when you go through when you go through centuries without anything really happening to you from outside nations, and the Most High blesses you with a sword, you get proud because you feel like who's going to take me down. That's why they really believe that their houses are going to continue forever. Who's going to come into power? The Arab, the Moabites, these niggas. That's how they feel.
And to back you up, could a brother give me Isaiah chapter 10? You can start at verse 12 and read down to verse 16, Baba Kashab.
Wow. This Isaiah 10 and 12. It says, for it shall come to pass that when start at 12, huh?
Khan,
10 and 12, right?
Khan.
Okay. It says, wherefore it shall come to pass that when the Lord had performed his whole work upon Zion and on Jerusalem, I will punish the fruit of the stout heart of the king of Assyria and the glory of his high looks.
And we know, America is known as Babylon the Great in the scriptures. And, in some verses, they're also known as the spiritual Assyrians. And what did the Lord do? With the ancient Assyrians, he brought them against the northern kingdom for their disobedience. They put them into slavery. And, then you had the Babylonians, which are an offshoot of the Assyrians, come against the southern kingdom and finish the job. So when Israel went off, the Lord would send heathens to take us down. And, here, where it says, I will punish the fruit of the stout heart of the king of Assyria and the glory of his high looks. It's going to also go into Esau, because what? We were being disobedient, and the Lord sent Esau, to take us down during the Renaissance and colonization, back all the way until today. And as the brother brought out in that Psalm 73, since they're not troubled as other men, and they're enclosed in their own fat, Esau is proud and lofty. He thinks he did everything on his own strength, and he's never going to be taken down, especially by the people he's conquered. Keep going on.
Verse 13. For he said, by the strength of my hand I have done it, and by my wisdom. For I am prudent, and I have removed the bounds of the people, and have robbed their treasures, and I have put down their inhabitants like a valiant man.
That's Esau through and through. The pride of thine heart hath deceived thee. By the strength of my hand and my wisdom and prudence have I put the people down. I have removed the bounds of the people. They name places after themselves. They go and remove the landmarks, rewrite history, exile the original people, and just make it seem like they were always there. And I have put down the inhabitants like a valiant man and robbed their treasures. And, through his blessing the sword, he gained the fatness of the earth and the dew of heaven. That's all colonization was. Going to other people's lands and what? Extracting their resources to the benefit of Esau, but to the detriment of the people in those countries.
Verse 15. And my hand had found as a nest the riches of the people, and as one gathered eggs that are left, have I gathered all the earth. And there was none that moved the wing or opened the mouth or peeped.
And what does it say in Isaiah 14? Is this the man that made the earth a wilderness and shook kingdoms and destroyed cities? For the last 500 years or so, people have been in fear of Esau, due to his, military prowess and his perceived sense of invincibility. And as it also said, and my hand hath found as a nest the riches of the people, and one gathered eggs that are left, have I gathered all the earth. What comes to mind is Habakkuk chapter 2, where it says what? He has heaped unto himself all peoples and nations and tongues. You can keep going on.
Verse 15. Shall the axe boast itself against him that heweth therewith? Or shall the saw magnify itself against him that shaketh it? As if the rod should shake itself against them that lift it up, or as if the staff should lift up itself, as if it were no wood.
John, you can read verse 16.
And therefore shall shall the Lord of hosts, send among his fat ones leanness, and under his glory he shall kindle a burning like the burning of a fire.
Khan. So as it said in verse 15, shall the axe boast itself against him that heweth therewith, or shall the saw magnify itself against him that shaketh it? Esau, just like everybody else, is a tool of the Lord. So what does it look like if you're using a hammer to hammer some nails, but the hammer doesn't want to hammer nails? It wants to do something else. It wants to bake a cake. It doesn't make any sense. But that's the pride of Esau. For one, he goes completely against what the Lord stands for, and then with the role that the Lord has set him up for, he thinks he's done it himself, so he doesn't need the Lord. Well, the Lord is about to show you otherwise, that what? You're subject to my will, as it says in verse 16. Therefore shall the Lord of hosts, send among his fat ones leanness. Back in that Psalm 73, they have enclosed themselves in their fatness. The Lord is stripping Esau, slowly but surely, of his riches, his reputation. What does it say back in Obadiah 1 verse 2? I have made thee small amongst the heathen. Thou art greatly despised. These other nations are starting to become military competitors with him. He doesn't have that same hold like he did for the last 500 years. And under his glory, he shall kindle a burning like the burning of a fire. And that's what everything's leading towards. World War III and nuclear missiles, being shot to the ends of the earth, with America being the main target.
I got a quick one for you.
Con, you got it.
This is going to become a burden to him, because it mentioned in 14 that, and my hand had found the nest as a nest the riches of the people. All right, and the Lord burning the fire in his riches. He devaluing the dollar. All right, and amongst other things, this James 5:1, it says, "Go to you now, ye rich men, weep and howl for your miseries that shall come upon you. Your riches are corrupted, and your garments are moth-eaten." You can get it whenever.
It said, "Go to now, ye rich men, and howl, for your riches are corrupted and moth-eaten," because all these riches that these Edomites, beginning with their elites, got was through treachery, great robbery and murder, as it says in Sirach, and through much violence, and deceit. Roughly paraphrasing, the kingdom is translated from one people into another. And another witness against you is what? All of these people on social media or whatever protesting, going into your dirty history, showing how you screwed over this group of people. These corporations are doing espionage here to overthrow sovereign governments and set up puppets. All your dirty dealings are being put on the forefront, and they're becoming a witness against you and a shame towards you.
Yeah, they goal is bloody, man. All right, they've done it off increase, robbery, bribery, interest. I meant to say, okay, and they have stolen gold. All right, amongst themselves, or treasures. They heaped up treasures that wasn't theirs, man. All right, it says, your gold, verse 3, your gold and silver is cankered. You see, and the rust of them shall be a witness against you, because they mentioned that they got the riches as a nest. All right, and the same thing that they heaped up or got, they're gonna vomit up, and it's gonna also be a witness against them, because it was blood money, man. And shall eat your flesh as it were fire. Like you was talking about, that fire that's gonna come up on them. Yeah, he trudges together for the last days. You got it.
Bringing up the fire again.
Mm-hmm.
That's where everything you're seeing taking place right now is leading towards. World War III and nuclear missiles being fired during it, and everywhere you Edomites dwell being touched by it. But just to back that up, could a brother get for me Habakkuk chapter 2? You can read verses should read verses 4 to 10, Baba Kashan.
Let me read 5. James 5. It says, "Ye have lived in pleasure on earth, and been wanton, ye have nourished your hearts as in a day of slaughter.
Could you reread it again, Baba Kashab?
It says, ye have, James 5:5, ye have lived in pleasure on earth and been wanton. All right. And through that pleasure they live by that with the sword, which was the blessing that the brother spoke about. All right. That they received in Genesis, man. Through the sword, they have the fatness of the earth. And it says, ye have nourished your hearts as in a day of slaughter. You got it.
And they have lived wantonly and deliciously and nourished their hearts as in the day of slaughter. You know, going back to that Psalm 73 that the brother brought out, you know, they wear violence, or violence compasseth them like a chain. They got everything through violence. And, you know, was it also saying in the scriptures, he that liveth by the sword shall die by the sword. And Esau's blessing, one of his major blessings to get everything, was the sword. So the Lord put you in a trick bag. The very same thing that you built yourself up with is going to be the very same thing that's going to bring you down. Because your ultimate sword is what? Those nuclear missiles, which, as we've been getting in a few precepts, it's talking about what? A great fire coming, you know, to take you down.
If I could say that blessing was given to him by Isaac, all right, and that statement was made by Yahweh Shai. So I said that's the ultimate trick bag. You get this blessing, but it's going to destroy you. But I got the Habakkuk if you want it.
You got it.
This Habakkuk 2, verse 4, it says, behold, his soul which is lifted up is not upright in him, but the just shall live by his faith.
You can keep going.
Yea, also, because he transgresseth by wine, he is a proud man, right? That pride compasseth his neck like a chain. It says, he is a proud man, neither keepeth at home, who enlargeneth his desire as hell, and is as death, and cannot be satisfied, but gathereth unto him all nations, and heapeth unto him all people.
That's been, you know, Esau's MO throughout history. You know, when we go to Maccabees, it talks about how Antiochus Epiphanes told all nations to follow off, you know, to stop following the ways of their fathers and come after the Greekish fashion. You had Hellenization, you know, Romanization, and now today it's just known as Westernization. But as I said, he is a proud man. Hey, the pride of thine heart hath deceived thee, neither keepeth at home. You know, Esau, wherever there's something lucrative around the earth, best believe you're going to find the Edomite there, or Edomite interests. He is a proud man, neither keepeth at home, who enlargeth his desire as hell, and is as death, and cannot be satisfied. They've been living wantonly out here, but gathereth unto him all nations, and heapeth unto him all people. And what does Esau always like to tout? You know, we're all one equal nation of people. You know, race, creed, religion, all these things don't matter. The only thing that matters is what? Equality, but just with me at the top. That's the whole idea of, you know, the American dream, you know, the boiling pot, all these things. And then what are these elites ultimately coming with? That NWO, one religion, you know, one currency, you know, one government.
Which goes back to the Tower of Babel. It says, shall not all these take up a parable against him, and a taunting proverb against him, and say, woe to him that increaseth that which is not his? How long? And to him that ladeth himself with thick clay.
Going into back in that Obadiah 1 and 2, you know, I've made thee small amongst the heathen, thou art greatly despised. You know, these different nations of people, and even your own people that you're oppressing, you know, are taking this proverb against you. And what? As I said, woe to him that ladeth himself with thick clay. When you go into that word clay in the Strongs, it's aptit, which means, you know, heavy pledges or debts. And, you know, this whole Western system is built off of what? Debt. You know, you've got credit card debt, student loan debt, you know, car loan debt. You know, the IMF puts the other nations in debt, you know, so people will never be able to build themselves up and always be subject to that interest. But the people are getting sick of it. Hence why you've got alternative systems like the BRICS and things like this coming up. And again, that's just another indicator that you're getting ready to get taken out of power. Why? Because these instruments that you've used to oppress the people for years, people are no longer fearing it and are starting to buck up against you.
It says, shall they not rise up suddenly that shall bite thee, and awake that shall vex thee, and thou shalt be for booties unto them?
Keep going.
Because thou hast spoiled many nations, all the remnant of the people shall spoil thee, because of men's blood, and for the violence of the land, and of the city, and of all that dwell therein.
Khan, shall they not rise up suddenly that shall bite thee and vex thee, because thou hast spoiled many nations, and all the remnant of the people shall spoil thee, because of men's blood and for the violence of the land. Again, as it said in Sirach, through great violence and deceits and all that, the kingdom is translated from one people unto another. Going to Obadiah 1:1, it said, an ambassador is sent among the heathen. Arise ye, and let us rise up against her in battle. These nations are rising up against you economically right now, but it's going to end militarily. And it's going to end in what? That fire, those nuclear missiles being shot onto you.
God, it says, woe to him that coveteth an evil covetousness to his house, that he may set his nest on high, that he may be delivered from the power of evil.
And it mentions what? That he may set his nest on high. Going back to that Obadiah, what? Though thou set thy nest among the stars, thence will I bring thee down. But it said, woe to him that coveteth with an evil covetousness. And that's the spirit of Esau, to covet things that's not his. His desire is as hell and death, and he cannot be satisfied. But as the brother brought out in James, your riches and your gold is rusted and cankered and moth-eaten.
I got a quick one.
And it's going to be a witness against you. But you got it, Kaya.
This Habakkuk 1:7. It says, they are terrible and dreadful. The judgment and their dignity shall proceed of themselves. I'm going to read in NLT. They are notorious for their cruelty and do whatever they like.
We read it again, Baba Kashab.
Habakkuk 1:7. I read it in NLT. It says they are notorious for their cruelty and do whatever they like.
Can you read verses? You can read down to verse 10, Baba Kashab.
It says their horses are swifter than a leopard's and are more fierce than evening wolves. And their horsemen shall spread themselves, and their horsemen shall come from far. They shall fly as the eagle that hasteth to eat.
Mm-hmm.
They shall come all for violence. Their faces shall sup up as the east wind, and they shall gather the captivity as the sand. And they shall scoff at the kings, and the princes shall be scorned unto them. They shall delight every stronghold, for they shall heap dust and take it.
And as it says in real quick.
But in verse 6, when it says, for lo, I will raise up the Chaldeans, was talking about, Esau, that bitter and hasty nation, which shall march through the breadth of the land to possess the dwelling places that are not theirs. Going back to that Psalm 49, removing landmarks, right? Doing the things. It says they are terrible and dreadful. Their judgment and their dignity shall proceed of themselves. And that's part of their pride. All right, like, who's gonna shut me down? Who's gonna stop me? All right, they do what they want when they feel like they want. All right, but their minds, according to Proverbs 21:1, the Lord got the king's hearts as the rivers of water, and he's changing them whatsoever he please. You got it, bro.
Khan. Yeah, I was looking for it in Psalms 10, but as it said, they shall spread themselves, their horsemen shall come from far, and they shall fly as the eagle that hasteth to eat. He is a proud man and neither keepeth at home. And again, the eagle being a representation of Esau and the swiftness he moved in, during the Renaissance and colonization. And as it says in verse 10, and they shall scoff at the kings, and the princes shall be scorn unto them. And whenever Esau took down these nations, one thing he did is what? Belittle them, make them seem as though they were less than nothing. They were backwards. They were less intelligent, less technologically advanced. When what? It was the will of the Lord that put you in this position. But now, as he's bringing you down, you're becoming a laughing stock before these different nations. Your wisdom is no longer being seen as wisdom, but foolishness. But just to back that up, I wanted to get Psalms 10. Psalms 10 and 5. His ways are always grievous. Thy judgments are far above out of his sight. As for all his enemies, he puffeth at them. And they backing him up. He scoffs at kings and princes and belittles them. But now that you're on the decline, what? These nations are rising up against you and, giving you that exact same energy. They got that saying, the people you see going up are the same people you see when you're coming down. And you treated everybody on the earth like straight garbage on your ascent. So now in your decline, you're getting that same energy. As it said back in Habakkuk.
Read 6 and Psalm 10 and 6 after 5. I'll read it. You read 5. I'm gonna read 6 for you. Salaka. It says, he in his heart, I shall not be moved, for I shall never be in adversity.
Hey, that's this devil. What? I shall never be moved. I shall never be in adversity. Going to Isaiah 47, I shall never be a widow or see the loss of children. I shall sit, be a lady forever. These Americans think America is never going to go down. You got it.
I got it real. This is Isaiah 47 and 5. It says, sit thou silent and get thee into darkness, O daughter of the Chaldeans, for thou shalt no more be called the lady of kingdoms.
Thou shalt no more be called the lady of kingdoms. Everybody's looking at America as a complete joke. These foreign nations aren't wanting to travel anymore. Iran has the Strait of Hormuz closed to mainly, afflict you. And all these nations are finding alternative ways to not deal with you economically, finding alternative military routes, all these things.
Yeah, I'm gonna jump to verse 7. And thou says, I shall be a lady forever. So that thou didst not lay these things to thy heart, neither didst remember the latter end of it.
Going back to that Psalms 49, they think their houses shall continue forever. And if you've been dominated for hundreds of years at this point, it's easy to see how you would think you would never go down. And then the Lord has blessed you with what? Your military, your technology, and all these things. But as we read in Psalm 76, it's the Lord that gave you that promotion and set you up. But now it's the time for your decline, and there's nothing you can do about it.
That when you are accustomed to privilege, because this devil been entitled, because the Lord set him up, like he said, I set a base man up in my kingdom. I have given my people over him. All right, so they didn't became accustomed or comfortable with having the privilege to do as they want when they want, or do as they will. All right, but when you're accustomed to privilege, equality feel like oppression, man. So when people do get to that level, or see you start to come down, you're gonna feel oppressed. This devil feel the oppression coming up on him, man. He's reaping the benefit of the curses. Okay, like you said, the same people when you ascended up, you're gonna see those same people when you come down, man. All right. So once it starts to begin to be an even playing field until this devil actually hits the ground, all right, everything gonna feel like a super oppression to him, man, because he have oppressed the people. It says he's a merchant, his seed is in his hand, and he loves to oppress. All right, you got it, bro.
Con. Did any of you brothers have a precept you want to bring out?
Con. Yeah, there's two of them in Isaiah 14. We'll start at 10. It's Isaiah 14 and 10. It says, "And they shall speak and say unto thee, Art thou also become weak as we? Art thou become like unto us?"
Con. Hey, just to back up, what brothers have been saying, these nations are starting to see your shame. They're starting to see your weakness. So they're no longer afraid of you. Art thou become as weak as us? With this recent, military operation the U.S. has had against Iran, you've got a bunch of political pundits and people just, in shock about how bad the U.S. has been losing to Iran, this so-called small, pitiful nation. You got it, Kayat.
Yeah, what's my man that be in the army? You like him? Y'all gonna got the dreads. I forget his name, but I was looking at a video with him.
Nick
The
Ivan.
sniper.
Yeah, the sniper. He said that
Talking about Nick Ivan.
yeah, Nick Ivan. He said that Trump, they never wanted to go into Iran, but he said now he can't get out of it. You got to do, bro.
And he too deeply invested in it now.
Yeah.
Like look at the mess he's caused. This whole situation that took place is the reason you have the Strait of Hormuz closure and these gas and energy shortages that are coming down the pipeline, which everybody's saying next month, again, July 4th being the 250th year of America, is when Americans are really going to start feeling these high gas prices and shortages and these other effects.
But this, I just want to get this real quick. This is verse 16. It says, "They that see thee shall narrowly look upon thee and consider thee, saying, Is this the man that made the earth to tremble, that did shake kingdoms?"
Hey, is this the man? Because when you look at Esau's history up until now, he looked unstoppable. But now with Trump's quagmire in Iran, they're seeing that America isn't as big and as bad as it used to be. That's why you got nations like Russia and China. You had a meeting recently over in China with the president, to where when Trump went to meet him, you could tell there wasn't a lot of respect there. But then when Putin and his people went over there, you could see it was an actual political dialogue. These people don't take you seriously anymore. And Trump is the perfect representation of everything that America is, and a perfect representation that this place is about to go down. A fake blowhard that can't back up anything he says, and is just a complete liar and a joke.
I got you for you.
Got it.
This Isaiah 33 and 1 says, "Woe to thee that spoilest, and thou wast not spoiled, and dealest treacherously, and they dealt not treacherously with thee. When thou shalt cease to spoil, thou shalt be spoiled. When thou shalt make an end to deal treacherously, they shall deal treacherously with thee."
Con. And that's been Esau's history, spoiling people and dealing treacherously. So now that he's on the decline and losing his grip on power, these nations have no problems dealing treacherously with you and spoiling you. These nations are licking at the chops to see the downfall of Esau, especially the downfall of America, because they all think that they've got next. But that's another thing. The only ones that have next are the Israelites in the kingdom of heaven. But could a brother get for me Job chapter 14,
I'm holding
verse
it.
5? Oh, you got it? Count.
God. This is Job 14 and 5. It says, "Seeing his days are determined, the number of his months are with thee. Thou hast appointed his bounds that he cannot pass."
Straight to the point. His days are determined and are numbered, and thou hast appointed the bounds which he cannot pass. And through prophecy, we can clearly see he's just about reached those bounds. Because what is synonymous with the destruction of Babylon and the kingdom of heaven? The MARK of the beast, that micro C hip implant. When the elites go to do that, that's going to be checkmate. And we can see that that's right around the corner. So that's an indicator that Esau is just about to reach those bounds which he cannot pass, and he's about to be taken out. The Lord has set up that trap, that snare for him, which he can't escape. Which if a brother could get for me, Job chapter 18.
I got you.
Con.
What verse?
You can start at verse 8 and read down to verse 20.
God. It says, for he is cast into a net by his own feet, and he walketh upon a snare.
Con, you can read to verse 10.
Con. The king shall take him by the heel, and the robber shall prevail against him. The snare is laid for him in the ground, and a trap for him in the way.
Con, for he is cast into a net by his own feet. A snare is laid for him in the ground, and a trap for him in the way. You know, the Lord has set up that trap for Esau. You know, these elites, you know, they're setting up this digital infrastructure, you know, these data centers, and moving everything towards the micro CHIP. And they think that once they get the people CHIP, they're going to finally be able to enjoy, you know, the fruits of their NWO. But like we just said, that's one of the main indicators in prophecy that you're about to be taken out of power when that mark comes. So the very same thing you think is going to give you freedom is really the very same thing that's going to get you caught up.
Verse 11. Terror shall make him afraid on every side, and shall drive him to his feet. His strength shall be hunger bitten, and destruction shall be ready at his side.
Con. And you know, when you look at Esau, you know, terrors are making him afraid on every side. You know, these different nations are turning against you. Your money's collapsing. You know, your societies and birth rates. Every indicator that empire's in decline is happening to you in real time, and there's nothing you can do to escape it. And as I said, his strength shall be hunger bitten, and destruction shall be ready at his side. And again, looking at the U.S.'s military operation against Iran right now, we can see that you don't have that same strength that you used to during World War II. Nations, you know, feared you. Like when you dropped those atomic bombs on Nagasaki and Hiroshima. You know, information has come out recently where Iran was saying, look, we're going to unveil, you know, our nuclear weapons capabilities. So it's becoming an even playing field by Yahweh Bahasham Yahushua.
Verse 13. It shall devour the strength of his skin. Even the firstborn of death shall devour his strength.
Con, and we've just been talking about these heathens coming against you. We haven't even gotten into Yahushua making his second coming to personally come and take you down. As it says in Isaiah 63, who is this that cometh from Edom with dyed garments from Basra? That's who that firstborn of death is, who shall devour your strength.
His confidence shall be rooted out of his tabernacle, and it shall bring him to the king of terrors.
Mm-hmm.
It shall dwell in his tabernacle, because it is none of his. Brimstone shall be scattered upon his habitation.
Hey, brimstone shall be scattered upon his habitation. What? That nuclear fire in brimstone.
It says his roots shall be dried up beneath, and above his branch be cut off. His remembrance shall perish from the earth, and he shall have no name in the street. He shall be driven from light into darkness and chased out of the world. He shall neither have son nor nephew among his people, nor any remaining in his dwellings.
You can read verse 20.
They that come after him shall be a stone that is they, as they that went before were affrighted.
And that's another thing. When you are taken out of power, you know, you're going to go back to being who you always were, a nobody. You're going to be in captivity in the kingdom, building it up. You know, George Washington, the Constitution, America, Rome, all these things are going to be forgotten. And then after that 1,000 years, after you served your sentence, it says, he shall neither have son nor nephew among his people, nor any remaining in his house. Your entire nation's going to be cut off. And as I said, 20, they that come after him shall be astonished at his day, as they that went before him were affrighted. Going back to that Isaiah 14, they shall narrowly look upon thee and say, is this the man that shook kingdoms? Art thou become as weak as we? You know, their ancestors were in fear of Esau during his time of domination. But, you know, now, and especially in the kingdom, it's going to be hard to believe that you once had the earth in the grip hold that you did, because that's just how far the Lord is going to bring you down.
Yeah, I got you one. This Sirach 41 and 5. You read the 7. One you like this one. The children of sinners are abominable children, and they that are conversing in the dwelling of the ungodly. The inheritance of sinners' children shall perish, and their posterity shall have a perpetual reproach. The children will complain of. Oh, you want to speak on it?
Oh no, you finish it out.
Con, the children will complain of an ungodly father, because they shall be reproached for his sake.
And you know, we're seeing that right now. You know, these Edomites are complaining about the situation that their forefathers got them in, because what? It's no longer benefiting them. The so-called white supremacy, you know, this great history they had. Everybody's seeing that it was all like a fraud, and that it was built off of a bloody foundation. So everybody's calling them colonizers, you know, racists, the problem of the earth, and they don't like it. And this is just the beginning of the condemnation that's coming towards you. It's really just verbal right now. Wait till it gets physical. But did any brothers have any precepts? Yeah, we can get. Let's see. Yeah, we can get a. Oh,
I got Salaki. I was in that same chapter. I was looking for it. It's up Sirach 41. And we jump to 9. It says, and if ye be born, ye shall be born to a curse. And if you die, a curse shall be your portion. And all that are of the earth shall turn to earth again. So the ungodly shall go from a curse to destruction.
Oh, yeah, that's straight to the point. If you be born, you shall be born to a curse. What does it say in Isaiah 34? The people of my curse under judgment. The Lord created you to hate you. He created you to be the wicked, you know, do your dirty dealings, and then what? Ultimately get judged and destroyed off the face of the earth. And that's going to be the whole story of Esau. You know, this is how not to rule. This is how not to be like, you know, a cautionary tale.
The destruction is that sounds like music to our ears, man. This man need to be rid of the earth, man. That's why the Lord said He's gonna make a speedy riddance of this man. Because I mean, since he been in power, that has rained, man. All right, let's be felt. That just been raining. Okay, so now it's time for life to spring up, man, and it's time for it to spring more abundantly. Like the elder went into, we looking for that dawn of that new day, which is that morning star, Yahweh Shai, man. All right, you have to bring the light over darkness. Okay, or we'll all perish, man. You know, you got it, bro.
And hey, to back up everything you just said, and especially where you said he shall make a speedy riddance, could you get for me Job chapter 20, read verses 4 to 9, Baba Kasha?
I've been holding that. It's Job 20 and 4. Notice thou now this of old, since man was placed upon earth, that the jumping of the wicked is short, and the joy of the hypocrite but for a moment.
As it said in Revelation 20 as well, what? That he shall come out and deceive the nations and rule for a little season. You know, to a human, 500 years or so, it seems like a lifetime. But to the days of eternity, that's a drop in the bucket. And, you know, we are at the end of this man's rulership. And as it also said in Matthew 24, I will shorten the days for the elect's sake. The Lord is not only did you have a short rulership, but what? At the end of it, he's speeding it up just to make that much more of a hasty riddance of you.
Yeah, it says, though, verse 6, 20, Job 20:6, though his excellency mount up to the heavens and his word reach into the clouds, yet he
Going
shall
back-
perish.
I was going to say, as it said, though his excellency mount up to the heavens and his head reach up unto the clouds, going back to that Obadiah, though thou exalt thyself as the eagle and set thy nest among the stars, thinking you're untouchable.
Yet he shall perish forever like his own dung. They which have seen him shall say, where is he? He shall fly away as a dream and shall not be found. Yea, he shall be chased away as a vision of the night.
He shall be chased away as a vision of the night. By who? The firstborn of death that shall devour his strength, the morning star. We're at the midnight hour right now of Esau's darkness, but what? That morning star. Yahushua is about to bring that new day, that new day of righteousness, that new day of the kingdom, and the new day of your captivity.
It says, the eye also which saw him shall see him no more, neither shall his place any more behold him.
That's it. But as I said, I also which saw him shall see him no more, neither shall his place any more behold him. Art thou become as weak as we? And back in that Job 18, they that come after him shall be astonished at his day, because of the low estate you're going to be in. And then after that 1,000 years, it's going to be that Obadiah 1 verse 18. The house of Jacob as a flame, and the house of Joseph, as a fire kindled, and the house of Esau for stubble, that Basra bonfire. But any brothers have any precepts they want to bring out? Hey, so with that, we hope you sincere Akim and Akwath were edified. Again, we're coming up on July 4th, 250th year of America, and we can clearly see all the indicators of an empire in decline and ultimately collapse is at hand. So you just keep strong and keep pushing. We're almost out of here. So before we get out of here, again, as always, we're going to give all praises, glory, infinite honors to Yahweh, double honors to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone who ruled and teach well, and peace and salutations to you sincere Akim out there, pushing this word in truth and sincerity to the four corners of the globe. May your brothers endure to the end. Shalom.
Shalom.
Shalom.